In the dry, oppressive heat of a Mexican desert evening, I found myself standing before a cantina in a remote outpost. Its name, which I was too tired to remember, hardly mattered. The air tasted of dust, sweat, and desperation. I had no particular reason to enter, except the unrelenting urge to witness the bitter struggle of men, to experience how humanity continually claws at the marrow of existence despite the inevitability of death. I had just finished shooting a documentary about the inhospitable landscapes of this region, the great sorrowful emptiness of the desert, a place where everything withers and only the toughest survive. But in this moment, as I approached the door of the cantina, I knew something else awaited me, chaos, and I was ready for it. Inside, the dim light flickered from a ceiling fan that had long since ceased to work, casting shadows that stretched like the hands of tortured spirits. The air was thick with the stench of sweat, old cigars, and the unmistakable tang of cheap tequila. At a weathered table in the corner, 7 men sat around a card game. 6 of them were bandidos, bandits, the kind who had lived their lives on the edge of morality, always one step away from death, but never quite embracing it. The 7th man, an old man with a craggy face and a wide-brimmed hat, was the dealer. He looked as if he had seen more than any man should ever see, and had long since stopped caring about the outcome of the game. I pulled up a chair and sat down without invitation. My instincts, honed by years of navigating the absurd and the macabre, told me that this was a moment I would later reflect on with fascination. It was an inevitable clash between the natural world's indifference and the absurdity of human endeavor. Poker in this setting seemed like a metaphor for existence itself, unpredictable, chaotic, and, at the end of the day, largely meaningless. The bandidos eyed me with suspicion, their hands twitching near the grips of their pistols. Their faces, hardened by years of violence, seemed almost like masks, faceless in their brutality. But I was not intimidated. I knew them, these men. They were like the landscape outside, jagged, barren, unforgiving. "What's your name?" one of them asked, his voice a gravelly whisper that seemed to echo through the dusty room. "Werner Herzog," I replied, my voice measured, calm. There was something in the air, a tension that thickened with every passing moment, but I was used to tension. It is, after all, the stuff of existence. One of the bandidos, a particularly burly man with a scar running down his face, grunted. "You here to play poker, or you just going to sit there and stare?" I glanced at the cards on the table. "I am here to play, but I must warn you," I said, leaning forward. "I do not play the game as you do. My game is one of pure existence. Poker is an illusion. The cards, they are but mere symbols. You think they control your fate, but it is your own decisions that doom you." There was a brief silence. The bandidos exchanged glances, their eyes narrowing in confusion, perhaps even fear. But they were men of action, not contemplation. They had seen death countless times, but never in a way that made them truly question the meaning of life. And so we began. The first few hands were unremarkable. I folded on the hands that didn't suit me. My poker face, a result of decades spent observing the absurdities of life, was impervious to their scrutiny. but I could feel their unease grow. I was playing not just with cards, but with their perceptions. It was as though I was pulling the strings of the universe itself, manipulating fate with every decision I made. Then, as I took the lead in chips, something shifted. The burly man with the scar leaned over the table, his face twisted in a sneer. "You think you can outplay us, gringo?" he said, his voice dripping with menace. "You think you can outsmart the desert?" I remained silent, watching as he placed his bet, his eyes never leaving mine. The air was heavy now, the tension palpable. It was as if the universe itself had paused, waiting for the next move. The dealer, an old man whose hands trembled as he shuffled the cards, glanced at me with something akin to pity. He knew what was coming. And then it happened. The bandidos revealed their true intentions. They pulled their guns in one swift motion, the metal gleaming under the flickering light. The silence of the room was shattered by the sound of cold steel. The game had devolved into something much darker, something I could never have predicted. These men had intended to cheat me from the very beginning, to take what little I had left, my dignity, my money, my life. But I was not afraid. Fear is an illusion. I had lived through the worst the world could throw at me: natural disasters, human cruelty, and even the profound existential despair that accompanies understanding the futility of human existence. I had endured it all. And so, when 6 men pulled their weapons, I remained calm, my pulse steady, my breath deep. "Put down your guns," I said, my voice low, like the growl of an animal ready to strike. "You misunderstand the nature of this world. You think you control it, but in the end, it controls you." The bandidos laughed, a harsh, mocking sound that echoed through the cantina. But as I stood up slowly, my eyes never leaving theirs, something shifted. They could see it, the determination, the unspoken understanding that I was no longer part of their world. The first man lunged at me, his gun raised, but I was faster. I caught his wrist with a single precise motion and twisted it until the bone snapped with a sickening crack. He screamed, dropping the gun. But I had no time to dwell on his pain, for the others were already moving. Another bandido came at me with a wild swing, but I sidestepped, my body flowing with the rhythm of the desert wind. I grabbed his arm, wrenching it behind his back with a force that would have shattered a lesser man's will. He crumpled to the ground. The remaining bandidos hesitated. They had seen the futility of their violence, but they were too far gone to turn back now. They came at me in a frenzy, guns blazing, fists swinging, but it was all for nothing. I moved with precision, my body a well-oiled machine of instinct and calculation. One by one, I disarmed them, breaking bones, tearing through their defenses as if they were mere illusions. There was no struggle. They were like shadows fading before the light of reason. When the last bandido fell to the floor, clutching his chest in pain, I stood over him, my breath steady, my mind clear. "Do you see now?" I asked, my voice soft but resolute. "Fate is not something you can control. It is something you must accept. Just as the desert swallows all who enter, so too will your existence be swallowed by the endless abyss of time." I turned and walked to the door, my boots scraping against the wooden floor. The cantina, once alive with the sound of gunshots and struggle, was now eerily silent. Outside, the desert stretched out before me like an endless sea of sand. The sun was setting, casting a blood-red glow over the horizon. In the distance, I could see a horse tied to a post. It was a magnificent creature, strong, resilient, much like the desert itself. It seemed to call to me, offering an escape from this meaningless world of men and their absurdities. Without a word, I mounted the horse and spurred it into motion. The desert wind whipped past me, carrying with it the scent of the earth and the taste of freedom. I rode into the vast emptiness, leaving the cantina and the bandidos far behind. But even as I disappeared into the horizon, I knew one thing for certain. Nothing is ever truly left behind. The desert, like life, always remembers. And so I rode, alone, as I always had been and always would be.